Are you ready?
Let's get ready to rumble! Can't wait!
This is Moffett on the mic on the A1 Sports Network.
Bow to the masters. Break it down!
How you doing, everybody, and welcome to the Moffett on the Mic show, courtesy of the A1 Sports Radio Network. We are doing the show on Zoom for tonight's show. As always, you can follow the show on Instagram at Moffett on the Mic, Twitter at Moffett on the Mic, and my Facebook page as well. I am Craig Moffett, and as I say time and time again, and now I'm starting to believe it with each passing day, that this show is not possible without the production stylings. Well, first of all, it's possible because I have my Apple computer. But it's, of course, not possible without the founder of the A1 Sports Radio Network, the showstopper, the head honcho, Chris Klim.
What's up, Craig? Very excited again. 2 days in a row, two guests. I'm very excited for tonight's episode.
So Klim is excited. I'm excited as tonight we're going to have another good friend of the show in the past. He is currently he's hosting the Jake Asman show every Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on SB Nation Radio. And he was a former alumni of the Sports on the Go One Network, where Clem and I came from before it became Worldwide Sports Radio Network. And that is, of course, Mr. Jake Asman of the Jake Asman show. We're going to be getting into some Texans football. We're going to get into some Jets football. Jake's a big Jets guy. Some Yankee baseball. We got a lot to cover with Jake on the show. So he's going to be on with us in about 10 minutes or so. So we're looking forward to that one. And we're not going to have a show tomorrow, but Thursday, tentatively, and I'm using tentatively because I'm not sure, we're going to have Tim Healy, Mets beat writer for New York Newsday. He's going to come on the show and talk some Mets baseball with us. With, a lot to go over, especially. So we're hoping we can have him on. This is right now being recorded on Zoom, and then Clem's going to turn it into a podcast courtesy of Spotify. So be on the lookout for that probably sometime tomorrow morning. So, Clem, it's kind of funny because, I was listening to the show we had with Isaac, and Isaac kicks ass like he always does, and it was a really good show last night. And I was listening to the part at the end when Isaac was asking me for advice on being a dad.
Right.
My wife happened to be sitting next to me while I was giving the advice, and my wife looked at me and, swear to God, she turned around and said, she's like, that's really good advice. Now, my wife and I don't agree on everything.
Mm-hmm.
More times than not, we don't.
Right.
So I literally got very close to, I wanted to record this moment because it doesn't happen very often. And I need it in case, we ever get into an argument and, she says, oh, and all that stuff. So it made me laugh. And when I thought about it a lot, I left out one little part to that. And I kind of told him, but I didn't say it the right way. And what I was saying was, when you do things, when you teach your kids stuff that you're into,
Mm-hmm.
it makes the stuff they like that you don't more tolerable.
Okay.
That's what I meant to say. And I couldn't get the words out. That's why I was kind of babbling a little bit towards the end. But it makes those things tolerable. You put up with their crap a little bit more because,
Yeah.
you just do.
Yeah.
But listening to that interview, we had a lot of fun. There was a lot of laughs on that, playing it back last night.
Well, I mean, we've had some good guests in the past, the Pisanos from What's Wrong with Wrestling, Christine Wen, the porn star, Daryl Slater. We've had all sorts of guests come on, but, it's just something about with Isaac, it's just like, I was even telling my dad, I'm like, every time we interview this guy, like, I've never met this guy once in person, but, like, I feel like me and him, we go way back just from doing these interviews.
Here's the crazy thing. When I worked with Isaac at CBS,
Mm-hmm.
totally not like that.
Really?
And the thing was, I knew him well.
Mm-hmm.
See, when I worked at CBS Sports Radio, I enjoyed every minute of it. Don't get me wrong. It was a lot of fun being in the newsroom. It was a lot of fun seeing the personalities. For the most part, the personalities were pretty cool. I never really had any issues. I worked a lot of overnights. So there was kind of like very anything goes type of stuff, really.
Right.
my primary job was to make sure that the anchors in the morning had enough audio to get through their updates, because they use a lot of audio sometimes for their updates
Mhm.
and everything. So that was basically the hardest part of my job, especially because I used to work with Rich Ackerman, and he was a bit of a tool, and he still is a tool. And he was like this guy that he always wanted this really random audio that was really tough to find,
Mhm.
but he'd swear up and down it was out there, but it's like, you go to the school website, you go to the ESPN, which you're not really allowed to use. You're not really allowed to use ESPN because they're rivals, obviously.
Mhm.
It's two national networks. But you had people there that were very cliquey, and they were kind of in their own little world together, and they didn't like any outsiders and everything, and all that stuff. And I think that's ultimately why I never made it there, because I feel like people kind of, I don't want to say the word blackball. I think that's a bit extreme, but I definitely think it was favoritism towards like other people. But then you had guys like Isaac, who were super cool, super nice, always willing to help you out when you needed it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because I owe our relationship with Isaac to Jake,
Mhm.
because Jake, when I reached out to Jake to be on our show when we were on Worldwide, and then I asked him to put me in touch with Isaac, because I told him, I was like, I used to work and Jake will tell you that he saw my name on a list of people working at CBS Sports Radio, but that was an old list, obviously. And then he put me in touch with Isaac, and then Isaac's been on our show ever since. So I owe our relationship with Isaac and him being on our show to Jake, because I don't think if I ever got in touch with Jake, we would have never had Isaac on, because I would have had no way of getting in touch with Isaac.
Yeah, and like where we've gone, with this relationship with Isaac, it really has like gone to like where we really are like friends, all three of us. Like he's literally like the third person of the show, and like I said, like we love having Jake on, we love having the Pisano's, Daryl Slater, a whole bunch, all these
Yeah,
people.
we gotta get the Pisanos on again.
We gotta get them back on. Yeah,
I miss those guys. Those guys were hilarious, and I replayed the video a lot of us when they came to the studio. They were outstanding. I loved every minute of hanging out with those guys.
Yeah, and another surreal moment too, because like my buddy turned me on to their podcast, and because my buddy's a big wrestling fan, so he was like, "Oh, you got to listen to these guys; they're awesome." And I was like, "Okay," and I listened. I fell in love with them like the minute I heard them, and I listened to their podcast every week. And the fact that they were able to come into the studio and do a show with us was even better, because it was like, wow, like I listen to these guys every day, and now I get to do a show with them. This is really cool.
And the thing is, they came all the way from Brooklyn to come to our show. And
Yeah, that's a far ride.
That's a freaking trek. I mean, I don't know where they were staying. I'm assuming they were, but either way, coming from Brooklyn all the way to Long Island, especially Eastern Long Island, it takes me 40 minutes to get out to that studio. I'm sure it took you kind of the same.
Yeah, it took me like 40 minutes. I can only imagine what it took them. And I was like, and it's not like, we were doing a day show. We were doing a
9
midnight
o'clock.
show. Yeah.
And then they drove back too.
Yeah, when they said that, when I told them where we were, I was ready. I was ready for them to say, yeah, we can't come out.
Get the hell out of here.
I was fully prepared for them to say, yeah, we can't do it. Like,
and the thing was, like, remember we were thinking about going to their show at the pub in Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Because they originally had it in the afternoon. And I was like, yo, let's go show them some love and everything like that. And then they moved it to like 11 o'clock at night, because it was right after NXT TakeOver, because they were going to TakeOver. And I just kind of was like, dude, I can't. There's like no way I'm going to schlep to Brooklyn at 11 o'clock at night. I love the Pisanos, and they've been really good to us and everything. And, I don't know who does the tweets most of the time, but their Twitter account's pretty fun.
Good, yeah.
So I am going to try to work on getting Christine back on.
Oh, that was great.
I really want to try to get her back on. She was a lot of fun. She was definitely, and I like kind of having that women's perspective on sports on the show. I think that's pretty important as well. So we're going to be doing a lot of cool things here. And, Clem's definitely been working the phones and stuff. I mean, we just got to do what we keep doing. Just keep reaching out to, reporters, wrestlers. Maybe we can even get in touch with the Creative Pro guys about coming on.
I messaged them a while ago, and I messaged Zach Ryder, and he was just like, "Oh, I can't. I'm too busy. Right? I'm a little busy right now. I'm so sorry. I can't do it."
Right.
I was like, hopefully we can work out something in the future. Blah blah blah. I'm gonna email him again though. Maybe he'll answer again.
Or reach out to Hawkins, dude. Like, just say, like, you're a fan of Cap or something like that. I mean,
Yeah,
because Cap's great. Like, I love going to their shows. You should definitely go to the show in Lynbrook if they come back.
I know. I want to. There have been times like I wanted to go with like some of my friends. I'm like, yo, let's go. Orange Cassidy's gonna be here, or Rhino, or whoever. It's just some indie guys, like some no-named guys. I'm like, yo, let's
Well,
go.
think about it like this, right? Now, I've been there a few times. The very first one I went to, it was Ty Dillinger was the big wrestler.
Yeah,
Ty
I
Dillinger and Scarlett Bordeaux, right? Scarlett Bordeaux was in NXT with Killer Cross because Killer Cross and her are together, right? So that was a lot of fun. Then you keep going on to the other shows. Like the last one I went to, they had Ethan Page from Impact Wrestling, and Orange Cassidy was the big draw, and whatever.
Yeah.
And then they had one where they had all the old ECW guys like Justin Credible and the Sandman and Little Guido, and that was like, so they did like a big like 8-man tag match with the ECW guys,
right.
and stuff. And they get a lot of indie guys that you'd never heard of before. Their stuff's on YouTube and everything. And I remember sitting ringside for the show, and literally this guy almost did a 360 right onto me in the front row. I was like, if they don't catch him, I'm like dead. This is like 180 pounds coming at me like full speed ahead.
Yeah, and now especially with some of the releases like Zack Ryder and Heath Slater, I would love to go see those guys.
And Hawkins is going to bring those guys in for like one-off shows here and there and stuff.
Exactly.
He does like I would say about maybe 10 shows a year, I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
He does one show in Hicksville, one show in Lynbrook. Those have been like the two main spots. But if you go to the back, just remember the Knights of Columbus. If you go to the back to like meet the wrestlers, it's really great and all, but it's also really tight. It is bad, dude. Like if because like everybody's sandwiched together. They don't really have a lot of space, but maybe we could try to like maybe work on a relationship with Creative Pro, especially after this all kind of goes away or calms down a bit.
Yeah, I'll reach out to people. One show I've been dying to go see, but they haven't been in New York or in the area in a long time. It's been Hardcore, House of Hardcore.
Yeah, they did a show in Deer Park, Dix Hills.
Yeah, like that was the last one.
And I never got a chance to see it. I almost did though, because the card was actually really good.
Mm-hmm.
And they, if you think that, Cap is one thing because a lot of those guys are in wrestling school, but they do put on a very, really, really good show. It's a lot of fun, very family friendly. You don't get like really the douchey, wrestling fans and everything. House of Hardcore, they had like a great card with like, I think at the time, it was John Morrison before he went back to WWE. Like Rich Swann was on it, Tommy Dreamer.
Yeah, House of Hardcore has some credible names on there, and I'm like, first of all, I miss ECW so much. I miss it so much. If I can get just a bit of what ECW used to be, plus I get Tommy Dreamer and some hardcore matches, sign me up any day of the week. I'll take that.
What's amazing is that if Paul Lee had been a bit of a better businessman, ECW, I don't know if ECW would still be in business today, but the 90s, man, like the 90s ECW, those matches were insane.
I've seen the YouTube videos, and
I'm probably on one of them too. Because like the shows.
I remember you told me some story about like a textbook or something like that.
Yeah, I gave one of the wrestlers my SAT book. And I gave I remember at the very first one I went to, there was a tag match. It was I think it was Tommy Dreamer and Shane Douglas, against Raven and Stevie Richards. And Tommy Dreamer, I passed my Nintendo to Tommy Dreamer 4 rows from the back, and he used it right on the guy's back. Like he just hits him right in the back with it.
Oh my gosh!
So that was actually like really funny. But that's where like guys like Rey Mysterio got started. That's where guys like Taz got started.
CM Punk.
I mean, that's the WWE side. When you go to the old school ECW, I'm telling you right now, I mean, I don't know how long before Jake comes on, but one thing I will say is you can credit Paul Lee with kind of rebuilding, rebranding Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Really?
Because when Steve Austin didn't have a job, he went to ECW and kind of became like that, kind of like a loudmouth type of guy, like kind of like how Stone Cold is.
Mhm.
right? He was really like raw. He was very like, vulgar and all that stuff. And then when he went back to WWE, they had him in some gimmick, and then he eventually became Stone Cold Steve Austin. But you could easily argue that the seeds for that gimmick were planted by Paul Lee and ECW. And then because of that, Stone Cold became a superstar. I mean, now it's what made ECW a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've gone back and watched those ECW matches with like the Sandman, Sabu, Terry Funk, all these guys, and I'm just like some of the stuff they were doing was just insane.
Yeah. Oh my God. The show's in like the ECW arena, which is really it's in like a crappy neighborhood. Like
And I hate to stop you there, but Jake is ready and waiting.
All right, let's put him on. And we are being joined right now by the host of the Jake Asman Show, Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on SB Nation Radio. He's been a good friend of our show. He was also a former alumni of the Sports on the Go One Network. And there he is, Mr. Jake Asman. Jake.
Guys, thanks for having me. I didn't realize this was a Zoom call until I'm like, oh, wait, they did mention they're doing the show on Zoom. So I'm in my car right now, but I'm parked on the side of the road, and I'm ready to go.
Well, I appreciate you thinking so much to pull over the car so you could talk to us for a few minutes.
My pleasure, guys. I hope all is well. I hope you guys and your families are safe up there.
Yeah, we're doing okay, man, and congratulations for getting back on SB Nation. I know it was a little bit tough with the furlough and everything, and it's good to have you back on the air, man.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it was weird. It's like, you do daily radio for so long, and then all of a sudden it's just like you stop going to work, and you're just like, all right, well, what do I do now? So I'm just glad that there was an opportunity to come back, and we were able to work it out, and just thankful for the opportunity, because I certainly missed having the platform to do a show every day.
No, definitely. And then I noticed that you were on a very long laundry list of movies you were watching on demand.
Yeah, I tried to fill some time by watching a bunch of classic movies that, for whatever reason, one reason or another, I had not seen. And some of them I've seen maybe parts of, or it's on TV. Maybe I've seen half of it, but start to finish, every movie on that list, I think there were 30 movies I put out there, were movies I had not seen in its entirety. So it was great to knock that off the list as well. And I binged some TV shows. I finally saw The Office. So, I feel like I finally get all the memes and everything you see on social media.
People vilify me for the end of time, but I just don't think The Office is as good as everybody makes it out to be. And I'm really trying, and I've tried to watch it, I've tried to get into it. And maybe it's just because of the dry humor, like it's too dry of humor for me. But I've tried, and people get so mad at me for not being into it. And I can't get into it. Like I just cannot get into that show at all. Like I really did try though.
It takes probably about midway into season 2 when I thought, all right, this is funny, I'll stick with it. And then I will say the last 2 seasons, they probably didn't need the last 2 seasons post Michael Scott leaving the show. And they probably could have done maybe just season 8 and then ended it there. There was clearly a big dip when Steve Carell left the show. But overall, very good show. I'm glad I finally got a chance to watch it.
All right, Jake. So you were one of the few people who just went to work on Bill O'Brien after he traded DeAndre Hopkins to the Arizona Cardinals. So he wound up getting a 2nd-round pick and I think a 4th-rounder, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yeah, it would be a 2nd and a 4th, and then the David Johnson contract of greatness.
So, so now that the Texans, though, have brought in Brandon Cooks, which kind of, to me, felt like a bit of a panic move because they didn't have Hopkins anymore and they kind of needed another receiver. Are the Texans, now listen, we know Cooks is not as good as Hopkins, but are they kind of right back to where they started, in your opinion?
Yes and no. I mean, in theory, if their team is healthy, I think talent-wise, they can make up not having DeAndre Hopkins. But the one thing about Hopkins that I think is a bit underrated is the guy doesn't miss games. He's missed, I think, 1 game in his entire career. And, one of those games that he missed, or maybe it was 2 games in his entire career, and one of them he missed because the team was just resting him because it was a meaningless game in Week 17 and he was banged up a couple of years back. So this guy always plays. He's durable. He makes plays. And the guys they're relying on now at the receiver spot, a guy like Will Fuller, when he's out there, he's a really good player, but he can't stay on the field. He can't stay healthy. He's always dealing with some sort of, soft tissue injury. And then you look at a guy like Brandon Cooks, who, when he's out there, he has potentially has talent, but there's a reason why he's been on all these different teams. not to mention the concussion risk that you're dealing with a player like him. So, I think they have talent. David Johnson is a talented player, but he's been on the decline the last few years. So there's just a lot of question marks with them. And one of the few, guarantees they had on the team besides Deshaun Watson and J.J. Watt was DeAndre Hopkins. And they decided to obviously trade him. And, the rest is history, how people in Houston and, around the NFL reacted to that deal.
And just an add on to that question real quickly, what does the future hold for Kenny Stills now that Cooks is there? Is he pretty much a cap casualty eventually, or do you think they're going to try to trade him to like Green Bay could use him, even the Jets could probably use him? So
sure. I tried to do some digging around on Stills. I've heard mixed things. There are some people that think the Texans are just going to hold on to him because of the fact they have a receiver group that could be dealing with some injuries if their track record goes holds true in 2020. But I also think there's a chance that this is someone that it could be a cap casualty. So I don't know if there's a clear answer yet on where they're at with Kenny Stills. I think a lot of it kind of depends on the training camp this summer. And if Kiki Cutie, who they drafted 2 years ago and had a promising rookie year when he was out there, but he's another guy that missed a ton of time. If Kiki Cutie now going into year 3, because last year he was basically in O'Brien's doghouse for pretty much the whole season. If he has a good training camp and he shows some signs, then I think that maybe hurts Kenny Stills' chances of being on the team. But I think right now it's very much up in the air on what his status will be by week 1.
Now with all the I think now after all these moves that were made this offseason so far, the AFC South is stacked. I think the Colts, the Jaguars revamped their team. We saw how good the Titans were in the playoffs last year. Who do you think is the favorite right now in the AFC South?
It's tough because I think it actually still might be the Texans, just based on, hey, you look at the best team in the division or best quarterback in the division. I think it's still Deshaun Watson, but to me, Tennessee's got the best roster in the division because of what they could do, from a defensive standpoint, and obviously what they have, at running back with Derrick Henry. But the question with Tennessee is going to be, all right, Ryan Tannehill's been, for the most part, an average to slightly above average quarterback in his career. Last year, he obviously took off. He played great, win comeback player of the year. Can he replicate that? Is he someone that, kind of figured it out later on in his career, or is he kind of a one-hit wonder like we've seen some quarterbacks have really good years and then, go back to what they normally are? So I would still lean Houston because I think, Deshaun Watson is that special. But I'm not going to discount what the Colts have done. I think the question with them is obviously Phillip Rivers. I mean, the guy last year was not good. Statistically, he wasn't good in just the eyeball test. I just thought, he looked like a guy that lost a significant amount of, his greatness that we saw for so much in his career. So I think it's a muddied division. I think you can make a case for 3 of the 4 teams. And, it'd be funny if Jacksonville makes a run after everyone's saying they're tanking and whatnot. But we'll see what Gardner Minshew turns out to be, getting a chance to be, the week 1 starter and really, try and, take a stranglehold of that position going into his second year. So it's a fascinating division. But if I'm making a pick, give me the team that has Deshaun Watson. So I'd still say Texans, but I'm not very confident when I say that.
We're talking to Jake Asman, host of the Jake Asman Show, Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. right here on SB Nation Radio. Definitely check it out. I want to switch over to the Jets, if you're okay with that. I'm sure you are.
The pain, yes, of course.
Okay. I am convinced that last year, if Sam Darnold had played a full season, he would have had a much better year than it looked under Adam Gase. Because when I looked at his stats, he had 19 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. He was really strong, I thought, the second half of the season.
Sure.
And half of those picks were in really 2 games. The games were the Patriot game where he saw ghosts, and then the Jaguar game right after that where he threw 3 picks. Am I wrong to think that Sam Darnold can thrive under Adam Gase? And is it possible he could easily throw 30 touchdowns this year?
Yeah, Craig, I agree with you. I mean, I'm one of probably the biggest Sam Darnold. I don't even want to call myself a Sam Darnold defender because I think I'm a realist. I think if you look at Sam Darnold and what he went through last year, people forget the Jets had a winning record when Sam played. They were 7-5 post-mono. They were 7-6 overall when he played. And let's also acknowledge that week 1 against Buffalo, where they blew the 16-0 lead, which is still I cringe when I have to watch highlights of that game.
I was in Georgia getting updates on my phone at a wedding.
It was a nightmare. And Darnold obviously is playing with mono in that game. You don't just get mono 2 days later. So he's obviously under the weather, and he said he was sick in that game. So, I look at Sam and I go, if you're an NFL fan, you're probably not watching every Jet game. When the Jets are 1-7, you're probably not watching the Jets like a Jet fan is. But if you watch Sam Darnold play, you see how special he is. You see that he had no offensive line and barely any, weapons on the outside. They lost Quincy Enunwa early. The line got beat up. Mike McCagan's, offensive line strategy. There wasn't a strategy. They never addressed the line. It was a joke. One of the first moves Joe Douglas made was trying to get the center from Carolina to come out of retirement, whose name is escaping me, but he was horrendous.
Matt Khalil.
Matt Khalil, thank you.
Ryan Khalil.
Ryan Khalil. Yeah, Matt Khalil was here in Houston, and he was god awful as well. My goodness, but so it's like when you watch Sam Darnold play, if you're a Jet fan, you should be excited about the future because you see the tool sets there. You see some of these special moments, some of these plays. I really believe if they surround him with the right players and the line is better, which I think by accident Joe Douglas has already improved this offensive line. Absolutely. I think he can take a huge step in year 3.
Yeah. One thing I was watching a lot of the I was watching some YouTube videos of Jets games from this past season, and some of the throws that Darnold makes are just like you can't teach that. Like the way he scrambles and finds that receiver in the corner, he's got a beautiful touch on the ball. I mean, I really think that under this team in a second year under the same offense, and you're bringing back guys who also have experience in this offense, like Jamison Crowder, Chris Herndon, Ryan Griffin, even a guy like Vincent Smith, who when you were on our show last, you hyped him up. You liked him from when he was on the Texans because they got him off the Texans practice squad. I mean, he's going to have a year of experience now under this offense. I think this offense could really thrive in 2020.
I agree with you. And I think, you look at some of the weapons. Everyone wants to talk about, the Jets have no weapons. And, do they have an elite wide receiver group? No. But I think it could be above average. I really do. I think you look at Jamison Crowder in the slot and what he did last year. He was outstanding. I think if you look at the 2 tight ends you mentioned, Ryan Griffin's another guy that was a really shrewd move that Joe Douglas made right before the start of the year. He played well. Chris Herndon, we didn't see at all last year, but we watched him as a rookie, really have that great chemistry with Darnold, towards the back end of 2018. So I think you look at what they did. It starts with the offensive line because we all realize just how poor it was last year. If the line's better, Sam will be better. If the line's better, Le'Veon Bell will be better. And I really think, Denzel Mims is going to come in and be a day one starter and be an instant contributor for this team. So I look at the Jets and I'm cautiously optimistic. Listen, this was a team that was 7-9 last year, and they very easily could have been 9-7, 10-6. And there's an extra playoff team now available in the conference. New England doesn't have Brady anymore. Like anything short of the Jets playing meaningful games late into the season is just unacceptable. It's been 10 years. It's time to make the playoffs.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed about Jet fans is I've noticed Jet fans on Twitter and everything they love Joe D. I don't really see them ripping Joe Douglas very much, unless maybe I'm following the wrong Jet accounts. I don't know, but I see a lot of praise every time he makes a signing. That they really like what they're seeing from him, just rebuilding that old line, to get guys like Connor McGovern, which I thought was a great pickup, and Greg Van Roten from the Panthers. And then he went double down on it by getting Becton and the kid from Charlotte in the 4th round, Cameron Clark.
All you need to know about, what Joe Douglas thought of the Jets offensive line is that they don't have a single starter coming back that he was responsible for, right? You look at Alex Lewis, that was a trade that he made over the summer. He's the only guy that's returning on that offensive line right now. So, yeah, I mean, I like what Joe Douglas has done. He said he was going to get Sam weapons. He said he was going to get Sam protection, and he's done that so far. I would have loved to have seen them, find another wide receiver that can come in and make an impact. But I'll tell you what, guys, I think Rashad Perriman is someone that could have a really good impact right away. He's basically, maybe a lesser Robbie Anderson, but I can see Perriman and Mims being really good on the outside together. Obviously, we know about Crowder in the slot. I like what they have, and I really think that if Sam just could stay healthy, he's going to take a huge step forward being in this offense for a full offseason and really hit the ground running when the Jets start the season. I am, as I keep saying, cautiously optimistic that the Jets could be a lot better than people think.
No, and I 100% agree with you. And the one thing, I like about Sam Darnold is, and the one thing it just feels – I feel a lot more confident with Sam Darnold going into his year 3 than I did with Mark Sanchez after him leading the Jets to 2 AFC championship games. There's just something about Sam Darnold you can see when he plays, the way he commands the huddle, that you just love. And we haven't had a quarterback like that since probably Vinny Testaverde was the quarterback for the New York Jets. I'll always appreciate Mark Sanchez for what he did, but, it's just something about Sam Darnold, the way he commands, the way he plays, that you just got to love and feel confident in him. And, yeah, I 100% agree with, Joe Douglas got the weapons. He got the line that he needed. And I think Sam Darnold's going to thrive in year 3 in the Jets offense.
I'll tell you what, I think about this often. Imagine, the Jets had the offensive line they had in 2009 and 2010 right now. We'd be talking about a team that it would be a legitimate Super Bowl contender. That's how special those lines were, Mark's first 3 years in the league when they led the NFL in rushing. So I think there's no doubt Sam has a chance to be, not just a good quarterback, but a great quarterback. But it comes down to his health, comes down to how the rest of the team plays around him. And, I'm optimistic that he's going to be that guy. And I think another underrated part about the Jets is their defense finished in the top 10 last year with all the injuries in the world on that defense. And Greg Williams has found a way, to have different guys come and play. And, we've never heard of some of these guys that now had valuable playing experience last year that now go back to being backups. And all of a sudden the Jets have a whole lot of depth on the defensive side of the ball. Mosley's coming back. Avery Williamson's coming back. You look at the Jets linebacking courts as deep as any in the league. So I'm very optimistic about Sam, of course, but I think, you look at the Jets defense last year, I think it's criminally underrated how good they were given the circumstances they were dealing with.
Do you see Joe D maybe making one more move kind of under the radar? I know there's been some talk about Logan Ryan. It was kind of blown out of proportion in New York. And, yeah, one of our favorites. So I can't stand, but that's but do you see another move? Because right now it's quiet, and this is also the time where I think that Douglas might pounce on a guy like whether it's a Logan Ryan or maybe Larry Warford for the line, although I'm not sure if he'll go line because I think he's pretty content with what he's got. Or maybe dark horse, Clowney.
I think it'd be tough with Clowney depending on how much money he wants. I don't rule it out, especially Logan Ryan. It just seems like, the Jets made their offer. He's trying to shop it around and get more money, and no team has been able to offer him more money, which is why he still remains a free agent. I do think ultimately, he'd be the guy out of the 3 you just mentioned there, Craig, they'd sign. I also could see a scenario where once training camp starts and we have an idea of when that's going to be and things, get back to, some semblance of normalcy this summer, I can see the Jets bringing in a veteran wide receiver to camp and giving that guy a chance to make the team. I think they know that they're going to have Perryman and Mims as their outside receivers and Crowder on the slot. But you look at the depth, and behind Vincent Smith, there's a bunch of question marks, and they have a bunch of undrafted rookies that they brought in. So I can see them maybe adding a veteran wide receiver. But I think, for the most part, unless it's Logan Ryan, I'd be a little surprised if they made any other, big splash at this point.
So how happy were you that Tom Brady is going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
It's thrilling. It really is. Because I'm friends with so many Patriot fans. I went to college with a lot of them, and it just, we've been tortured our whole lives by Tom Brady. So, it's nice that not only did he leave New England, but he went to the NFC. He's playing for the Bucs. So it's not like he's still in the conference or the Jets are still going to have to deal with him. To me, my dream scenario is Brady goes out there and plays great for the Bucs, and the Patriots are 2-14, or not 2-14 because we don't want them to get Trevor Lawrence. But let's say the Patriots are 5-11, and they're just not good. And Brady's great, and he's excelling elsewhere because I want to try and inflict as much pain as possible to every Patriot fan. So I think that's the best way to try and do it. New England's awful, and Brady's leading the Bucs to the playoffs, and he's playing well, and who knows what happens.
But in your opinion, do you think the Bucs are kind of maybe now that they have Brady, and listen, that offense is going to be insane with Godwin and Mike Evans, and of course, and OJ Howard, Cameron Brate, just to name, I'm sure there's more that I'm missing. But do you think the expectations on them are at an all-time high? Pretty much it's Super Bowl or bust in 2020 for them?
I think it's certainly high. The Bucs haven't made the playoffs in so long that I think just getting there would be a big accomplishment for them. But you look at, what they have, defensively, they were a top 10 rated defense last year. Todd Bowles, awful head coach, but he's a very good defensive coordinator. So he did a nice job last year. You look at what they have, weapons wise, you just mentioned it. Anything short of the playoffs, I think would be a big disappointment. I think the NFC is loaded, so it could be tough to be Super Bowl or bust. But if the Bucs, I don't think the Bucs are going to be like this year's version of the Browns from last year. I don't see that happening. I think Brady's too good. I think Arians is not Hugh Jackson, or, he's not Freddie Kitchens. Like, I think you have a good head coach, a quarterback with the best weapons he's ever played with around him that's highly motivated to leave New England and play well. I see the Bucs being probably at least a 10, 11 win team, and maybe, having the opportunity to go to a Super Bowl. I wouldn't pick them, but I think they're certainly in the mix. They've earned that right after what they've done.
I'm going to switch it over to baseball for a second. I need you to tell me if I'm crazy or if I'm right. Before this whole coronavirus thing started up, the biggest news in the world, in the sports world, was the Houston Astros cheating scandal. Now, my conspiracy is that the Houston Astros released the COVID-19 virus onto everyone.
Oh God!
just to get the
I told you not to tell him that on the show.
Just to get the news off them, and it spiraled out of control. Thoughts?
It's funny. As you were saying that, I was thinking in my head, I was about to blurt out, yes, the Astros were the ones who created Corona. And then you ended up actually saying it. So I'm like, all right, there we go. It's funny because you're right. That was the biggest story. And now it's like, not only do none of the players get suspended, not only does the title not get vacated, but they don't even have to deal with fans that were going to be vicious to them when they go on the road and boo them the whole year. They don't even have to deal with that now. So you talk about a team that is kind of like been able to, slide right under the radar through all this. It's been the Houston Astros for sure.
But is this kind of something with them that's maybe like this whole pandemic and the fact that even if we have baseball at this point, and I'm not really that optimistic about baseball because I just don't see a full-fledged plan in effect by now, or at least something that's really close. Now you have the players union and the owners, haggling over money, and outside of the no fans thing, I just don't really see an ironclad plan where the players are going to be protected from possibly getting sick. So in many ways, is this a blessing in disguise for the Astros to deal with in 2020? Or do you think it'll just, in 2021, when their fans are, back in stadiums full-fledged, are they just going to get destroyed in 2021 by the fans?
Yeah, I think obviously that will be, there'll be fans that are going to boo, but it's not going to be nearly as intense and nearly, as crazy of a story as it would be if it was, coming off the heels of, the revelation of the scandal coming out and boom, here comes the season. I think it will feel different if and when that does happen. And who knows, maybe by the playoffs this year, fans will be able to go to games. And how crazy would it be if, the Yankees and Astros meet in the ALCS and it's the first time fans are allowed, in the stands, something like that.
Yeah,
but it's just crazy timing, right? I mean, the Astros were going to be the villain, and they'll still be the villain, during the season, but it's going to be a totally different dynamic if, there's no fans in the stands like we all expect.
They were getting beamed during spring training. They were getting hit during spring training.
It was crazy.
Not by a guy like that wasn't going to make the roster. I think it was by like one of the actual starters on a team. They were like, I think Altuve got hit once. I think somebody else got hit. I think Bregman got hit once. And I mean, if they're getting beamed in spring training, it was only a matter of time before it was going to happen, in the regular season.
Yeah. Yeah, there definitely were going to be some incidents. I mean, baseball was trying to put in rules to, try and guard against, bench clearing brawls and guys being thrown at. But you knew players always take matters into their own hands. And, baseball has all those unwritten rules. So you knew there was going to be, I'm sure multiple incidents during the season. There still might be. It's just a totally different dynamic when you're going to be doing it in like, an empty stadium. But it's still going to be compelling. I mean, when they do play, teams, because there's no crowds, maybe we have field mics pick up things. Different players are yelling at different Astro players. So I still think it's going to be compelling TV to watch, when the baseball season hopefully does come back.
Now, I was going to say, you're a Yankees fan, but you cover sports in Houston. When the scandal came out, as a Yankee fan, how did you feel? And then, like, as a sports reporter in Houston, how did you feel?
Well, it was interesting because the show I do on SB Nation Radio is a national show, even though we're based here in Houston. Mm-hmm. So I kind of looked at it from the national perspective. And then, it was really interesting getting the chance to be on, ESPN 97.5 here in Houston locally and talk about it because it's kind of two different perspectives. As a Yankee fan, listen, I felt they got off. I felt they got off pretty easy. I thought Manfred didn't do a good job. I understand his argument was, well, I had to give immunity because I needed to get information. Yeah. Oh, I couldn't suspend the players because the union wouldn't let me. Well, at least try. Make Tony Clark, the head of the union, look like the bad guy. Like, show the baseball fan that you care about the integrity of this sport rather than just letting these players, and in what your investigation called a player-driven scheme, show some guts and do something about it rather than, let him off the hook. And, the thing they could have done is they could have vacated the title because now, Astro fans are big. We're still World Series champs, but no one looks at that cleanly. Like anytime people talk about the Astros, they're always going to be linked, to that scandal. So Manfred could have done that. I just thought the punishment was weak. Getting rid of AJ Hinch and Jeff Luhnow, giving them suspensions. I just didn't think, it was the appropriate type of punishment. And, I think a lot of Astro fans, recognize, what the team did was wrong. But here's where I will agree with the Astro fans here. A lot of them could acknowledge, hey, we did this. It was bad. It's a bad look for the organization and whatnot. But you can't tell us the Red Sox didn't have any idea what was going on. Alex Cora can't go from, being our bench coach in 2017, going to Boston in 2018 as the manager, winning the World Series. Red Sox get caught for cheating, doing something similar to the Astros, and the report from baseball says, oh, Alex Cora didn't know it was going on. Like, we're supposed to believe that the guy that was, the quote-unquote ringleader in Houston went to Boston, did another type of cheating scandal, had no idea what was going on. It's just, that's where I kind of feel like, all right, the Astros, yeah, they deserve to be slammed by everybody, but the Red Sox, they've kind of been given a free pass here in a sense as well.
Mhm.
With the Astros, do you think that since in a year it won't blow over, but it won't be nearly as impactful as it is right now. What does that mean for AJ Hinch? Do you think he'll wind up managing after his year suspension is up in the majors next year, or do you think that he's pretty much not blackballed out of the league? I don't want to use that term, but is he going to find it very difficult because teams aren't going to want the drama following him to whatever team he winds up going to?
Hinch is so highly regarded by people around the game, and he has such good relationships with so many different executives around the game that I do think he's going to get another chance to be a manager. The same could not be said for Jeff Luhnow. I mean, reputation-wise, people around the game detest this guy, and I heard a lot of rumblings of that, just being here in the city on how paranoid he was with certain things. He was the very definition of a control freak, and I think a lot of people heard rumblings on about that with Luhnow. I don't really know him. I've only met him a handful of times. I really don't know him personally, so I can't speak to, some of the allegations about him that are out there. But I can tell you from interacting with AJ Hinch, he's a likable guy. He seems like a stand-up dude. And I think that ultimately, he was one of the first guys to come out and apologize and own it. I think that's going to help him down the line. And I do think the fact that he is still considered a really good manager, I think he's going to get an opportunity to manage again one day. If not next year, then in the near future, I think for sure.
Now, have you heard anything, what might be going on with, playing games for the season at all? Like anything new that we haven't really heard of yet?
People around the Astros expect the season to happen 100%. I mean, the money stuff between the players and the owners, I think it's a bad look for both sides. What Blake Snell said, whether you agree with him or not, that should have probably just – I don't even think probably. That shouldn't have been said publicly. Let your union head deal with that stuff. 1 in 5 Americans are out of work. People don't want to hear you don't want to play for a few less $1 million, playing a major league sport when, you have essential workers at the grocery stores and at the post office still working and they're not being paid millions. So no one wanted to hear that from Blake Snell. But everyone I talked to thinks ultimately, the confidence level is still very high that the players and the owners, they'll get something done. We'll have a spring training that's probably about 2.5, 3 weeks, and the plan's still around the 4th of July weekend to give things a go. So that's I'm kind of hearing the same thing that I feel like everyone's been hearing, but that's kind of the latest on at least what people around the Astros think. They think there's going to be a season that's going to be played.
What about with regards to like the NBA and the NHL? Because what it's looking like is that this summer could wind up being a crazy summer with all 3 sports going on simultaneously, which would have probably happened in April anyway. But NBA looks like they're kind of 50-50. The NHL seems like they're still trying to formulate this 2014 playoff thing. Do you see all 3 leagues back this summer?
I see. You know what? I do see it. I really think that we're going to get to a point here where it seems like we're trending in the right direction. Like every day I'm reading this stuff that it seems like more and more that, we're going to have a resolution on both hockey and basketball. It looks like it could be the bubble city thing where it's like, oh, we'll go to Orlando if we're the NBA, or the NHL is talking about having 2 different cities, serving as the hub for their playoff system. But I do think these leagues are going to come back. There's so much money that's on the line, and especially now in television revenue, when you look at these postseason contracts, that I think these leagues are going to do everything in their power to try and crown a champion. And, it's a little more complex with baseball because baseball has its full season to play. They can't do a biodome situation where they're just in one area for a full year. No one's going to leave their families for 5 months. But with hockey and basketball, it's just a couple of weeks because you're just talking about the playoffs. So I think it's very likely they get something done. And I do fully expect that we're going to have, an NBA postseason and an NHL postseason at some point.
Now, considering, with this whole COVID-19 going on, Aaron Judge had a pretty serious injury before this all started. It's kind of like a blessing in disguise. Well, not a blessing because obviously, we know what's going on. But in Aaron Judge's sake, he and the Yankees' sake, he was going to miss like a month or two due to this rib injury. But now, the season's been delayed and whatnot. It kind of looks, better for that he'll start the season on time. But what do you think of his injury? Like what's wrong with him really? Because it's still a mystery to some of us.
Yeah, it seems like he's still not fully recovered yet either, which is a bit of a concern if you're a Yankees fan, just because we were led to believe that, he'd be fine, whenever the season does return. And now, it seems like I heard Brian Cashman make comments last week that, right now he wouldn't be ready to participate in spring training if spring training were to start. So I think it's definitely a concern whenever he is healthy. He's got to stay healthy, for however long the season is for the Yankees. There's no doubt. But what frustrates me about his particular injury is that he suffered it last September, making a diving catch in the outfield. I think it was September 18th.
That's what's so odd about it.
And so the fact that it took so long for them to diagnose what it was, and, he's doing all his off-season training and ramping up when he could have been resting, getting healthy in the winter, and then gearing up for the season. It just seems like someone, on the Yankees and the medical staff, I don't know how it happens, but it just seems like, the injury situation should have been handled better. And it's like we all know how bad it was for the Yankees with injuries last year. And it's like 2019 never ended. 2020, with Severino already going down and obviously Judge, getting injured here and maybe not being ready when the season does resume. It just feels like a continuation of what we saw last year.
So here's my last question, and I'm going to jump back to football. I want to get your thoughts on this whole new protocol now with regards to interviewing minority candidates, because it's been a huge topic for going on now, years. It almost just seems like the Rooney Rule is just there just to kind of interview a guy, but he's not really the guy that's going to get the job, but you're just kind of satisfying the rule. And Goodell had come out this possible rule of now building, if teams hire an African-American coach or a minority coach or an executive, they can move up in the draft as much as 16 spots if they hire both in the same year. To me, it just seems like it's a bit of a slap in the face to minority candidates, because it seems like you're only really hiring the guy because you want the draft. You like what the guy can do, but I think you might be happier with being in the moving up in the draft. But I wanted to get your thoughts on that as a possibility, because a lot of people seem to be really tearing it to shreds on Twitter and like all social media.
Yeah, and I saw that the NFL today, they basically announced that they were tabling, the draft pick compensation discussion for the minority candidates. I've talked about this on the radio show the last 2 days. I think clearly, there is an issue with the lack of minority coaching candidates and the lack of minority, GMs in the league. I think it's 2 African-American GMs and 4 African-American head coaches, or 3. And then, I think it's 4 minority head coaches, because Ron Rivera is, he's obviously not black. But you look at, kind of where the NFL is right now. I think what needs to be done is just, finding different ways, not to necessarily incentivize teams to hire minority candidates, but to give teams better opportunities, to be put in position where they would hire one. And actually, one of the suggestions I made on the show, I saw the league adopt today, effective immediately, that, moving forward, coordinators, when you're interviewing someone for a coordinator position, you have to speak to at least 1 minority candidate. They made it so it's not just 1 minority candidate you have to speak with when you're being a head coach. It's now 2. And they also did something I think that's so important. NFL teams can no longer block assistant coaches from getting essentially getting a promotion. So if you're a defensive line coach and you're the defensive line coach of the Jets, and the Green Bay Packers call you and say, hey, we want to interview you for a DC job. Well, the Jets could block the Packers from allowing their DC coach to go and interview for that job. So all of a sudden, now the NFL is saying, well, you can't block assistant coaches from interviewing for jobs that would be a promotion. So that's another way where you just let, your top assistants kind of rise to the ranks a lot quicker, because what we've seen over and over again, outside of the rare exception like a John Harbaugh or a Joe Judge, who were special teams coordinators, the overwhelming majority of head coaching candidates were successful OCs or DCs. So you got to open it up where more assistants can rise to those coordinator ranks, and you got to open it up where people interviewing for those coordinator ranks are more minority candidates. So I do think, some of the rules they did implement as of today are going to be positive in regards to trying to get more minority candidates in place.
All right. Well, before I let you go, yesterday we had Isaac Feldman on our show. So he's one of our favorites, and we got into talking about what shows we're binge watching. So we need to know right now, before you get out of here, what show is Jake Asman currently binge watching?
Oh, that's tough. So it was The Office, as I mentioned. I also was watching the show Dave, which was on Hulu and FX. That was pretty good. That ended season 1. I'm actually in the process of deciding on a new show. So if you guys have something that you say, hey, I need to be watching, let me know, because I'm kind of, I'm at that point now where it's like I just finished the show and now I'm trying to decide what I'm going to dive back into.
I'm going to blow Clem's spot up a little bit here because, go ahead, Clem. Why don't you tell him what you're binge watching?
I literally last night, I just finished The Sopranos.
See, I mean, my God, look how far back he is.
I know, I'm way far back, but Jake, I'm in the same situation as you. I just finished The Sopranos. I need a new show to watch, and I narrowed it down to 3. It's either Ozark, Peaky Blinders, or The Wire.
Peaky Blinders is really good. I've heard really good things about Peaky Blinders. I'm still watching Narcos Mexico right now.
Okay.
That's one of my favorite. It's really good. Like, it's really, really good. Like, very deep, and Diego Luna is amazing as the main character. So it's on Netflix, and you can deal with the subtitles because literally 90% of every episode is in Spanish. It's well worth it. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah, I heard good things about all those shows you just mentioned. I will say, everyone keeps telling me Ozark. So I think I'm leaning towards that. But every show you said, it sounds pretty good.
He is the host of the Jake Asman Show every Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on SB Nation Radio. He is a good friend of our show. And we just want to say thanks to Jake Asman for just checking in with us and talking some Texans football, Jets football, and everything else going on in the sports world. We really appreciate it. Jake, stay safe out there, man. And like we said earlier, it's good to have you back on the radio, bro.
Likewise, guys. Thanks so much for having me. Best of luck with the show. And I hope, you and all your listeners, you guys continue to stay safe up there. I'm definitely thinking about New York.
All right, man. Take it easy. All right. Take care of yourself.
You got it, guys. Thank you.
All right. That was Jake Asman. Again, you can catch his show every Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. right here. I don't know why I keep doing that. On SB Nation Radio. Definitely check it out. He's awesome. And like I said it earlier, and I think you'll agree. If it wasn't for Jake, we wouldn't be having conversations with Isaac. I'm convinced of that.
Look, and again, Jake, another great interview. Every time we talk to Jake, it's always so nice, it's just very clean, wholesome. We crack some laughs, and it's just a very good overall interview with Jake.
He's in like a parking lot at like a Target somewhere talking on us. So Jake's the man, and we really appreciate him helping us out and being on our show for a few minutes just to talk some football and everything. So I meant to tell you before Jake came on. So I texted Isaac late last night just to say, thank you for coming on our show and everything. And I just wrote, always a lot of laughs when you're a guest. And he just wrote, he wanted me to just kind of relay this message. He wrote, thanks, brother. I appreciate that. You and Chris are cool dudes. And we enjoy watching and enjoy doing the show. And he put something on Facebook that just made me laugh that he wrote moving up in the world or something like that. And it's like he wrote, Ictagon.com is evolving, and it's just basically a picture of like a desk, like a little desk, probably like what you have in your basement right now with an Apple computer on top of it and a microphone. Because if you watch the video of us doing it last night, man, that room he's in looked like something out of the movie Taken. Like it was like this little box of a room, But no, Isaac is cool, and Jake, again, thank you so much for being on our show. See, man, I wasn't wrong about Darnold, dude. Like, not to say Jake definitely reiterated what I was trying to say because a lot of people missed that part, missing those games really. And the fact that he wasn't 100% against Buffalo,
Yeah.
I mean, watching him make those throws, if you go back to the videos of the games that they won last year when he played the Giants and they played the Redskins and, and they played whoever else that, they beat and everything, you really see some just amazing throws that he makes.
Right.
Whether scrambling, just the perfect touch. He's got such a great touch on the ball, man. And, I really think he's going to, I'm not saying he's going to be like Drew Brees under Adam Gase. And it was kind of funny because I was reading something the other day about Gase, and I think it was on SNY. Ralph Facciano actually does an awesome job writing about the Jets and Giants and stuff. And he kind of, I guess he was interviewing a couple of AFC scouts, or just, he just made them, he didn't name them in the interview, but he basically said that, Gase is who he is, but at the same time, this person thought that it was unfair that Gase was labeled a quarterback whisperer and, all that stuff. And people put a lot of crap on Gase to be this, savior of teams and offenses and everything. And the Manish Mehtas of the world do this all the time. And, and maybe it is unfair to Gase. Maybe that's not really what he is or how he patted him. It wasn't like he was patting himself on the back. Like, yeah, if it wasn't for me, Peyton Manning wouldn't be anything, I mean, that's very extreme to think that.
Right.
And I'm saying, I think this is the first time in a long time that Gase has a quarterback that he knows can thrive. So if you think about when Tannehill was on the Dolphins, at the time, Tannehill wasn't that good.
Yeah.
Everybody expected Gase to turn Tannehill into Dan Marino. In Chicago, when he had Cutler was a lazy freaking quarterback. Everybody knew that. Yeah, he had, he played okay. It wasn't like he didn't play bad, but you could tell just by the look on Cutler's face on the sideline, he just looked lazy. He just looked like he didn't care.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm saying, some of the things that Sam puts on the table, man, you just can't teach that. You just can't.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it was just there's something about him when you just watch him that you just feel like, he's yards better than what Sanchez was after leading the Jets to 2 AFC championship games. And I love, like I said, I love Sanchez for doing that. He helped us get to the AFC championship game. Without Sanchez, we don't get there. But, it's just I feel like Sam is just yards in front of what Sanchez was at this time. And we haven't had a quarterback we were this confident in since Vinny Testaverde.
But here's another thing I'm going to drop on you, and I know you're going to be a little caught off guard when I say this. I'm even convinced that with the right coaching, and if he hadn't been thrown out to the Wolves so quickly, I think Geno could have been a decent quarterback for the Jets.
It's funny. I don't disagree with you because I'm this may have been a few weeks back. I'm in one of my Jets Facebook groups, and one guy was just like, "Oh, why did Geno Smith never get a chance?" So I looked back, before I said anything dumb on Facebook where I looked like an idiot. I looked back at some of his stats and some of it, and he led the Jets to an 8-8 record his rookie year. Not bad rookie year, especially with a team where he had no one. But like I just mentioned there, he had no one when he was playing. He had no one. Yeah,
it was, and I said this to people too, and people ripped Geno to shreds every chance they got. And listen, Geno had some brutal games. I'm not gonna, when Geno didn't have it, he didn't have it, and he was a turnover machine. But at the same time, I blame Rex for that because, and I say this a lot, Rex, listen, I was a big Rex Ryan fan, so I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, they should have never hired Rex Ryan, because then I'd be the biggest hypocrite on 2 feet.
Yeah.
Did I think Rex's act got tired? Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely got tired. But it doesn't mean I didn't respect what he did for the Jets, and I really did think he was a good coach. He just didn't know how to roll with the tides. He didn't know how to change. And that's the problem when you hire coordinators to be coaches, because they just focus on their part of the team. If it's a defensive guy, it's going to be a defensive coach. Todd Bowles was a defensive coach, so he focused on defense more times than not. He didn't teach anything to the quarterbacks. Yeah. He didn't teach anything to the receivers or the running backs and all that stuff. He didn't run the offense. And you do see this situation like that now with Gase and Williams. Although it's pretty simple. Gase probably just says, you will control the defense. I'm not going to step on your toes. You're the defensive coordinator. You do what you got to do, and I'll run the offense.
Yeah.
The problem with Rex was, and I take it back to that preseason game where he put Sanchez in the fourth quarter of a meaningless preseason game against the Giants when he wanted that stupid trophy, that Snoopy trophy that they get when they win a game because it's the MetLife Bowl or something like that. That was a game you should never have put Sanchez in the fourth quarter against a bunch of linemen that have no chance of making the team. And you inadvertently got your quarterback hurt.
Yeah.
You were reckless and you were irresponsible. And it put an unnecessary burden on a guy like Geno Smith, who was a second-round pick, who everyone knew needed grooming, who wasn't ready to be an opening day starter in the league. And Geno showed you some flashes. He did. He also made some really careless mistakes too. I'm not going to disagree.
Yeah.
But I just think under the right coaching, under the right tutelage, I think he could have been a good starting quarterback in this league. He had the arm and he had the legs.
Yeah, I mean, look, we'll never know what he could have been, but and yeah, I love Rex. I'll love Rex till he'll probably be my favorite coach of all time. But you saw it even with Sanchez. Sanchez never really developed properly under Rex Ryan, and when it came time for Mark Sanchez to be the big dog, Sanchez wasn't able to do it. And then when you had, I think Idzik set Rex Ryan up to fail. That's the team Geno Smith had his rookie year was not good. Jeremy Curley was the best wide receiver. Santonio Holmes was 1 foot out the door. Matt Forte was at the end of his string. It was just not a good team, And even the following year, the Jets he signed Eric Decker, but Eric Decker wasn't a number one wide receiver. You had to get more out there. And
but think about it like this, okay? And maybe I'm wrong. This is the problem I've always had with the Jets organization in general. They have to understand that if you want to get the GM candidate in, you got to get rid of everybody. The coach has to go, everybody has to go. You cannot make it a prerequisite that if you want the GM job, you got to take Rex. I don't give a crap how much you love Rex. And yes, in 2009, 2010, they were a great team. They almost went to the Super Bowl back-to-back seasons. The fact is, though, is that if you're going to bring in a good GM candidate, a guy who, because you know what the GM candidate's going to want to do first, he's going to want to build his own team.
Yeah.
He's going to want to with his own coach and let that coach hire his own coordinators. It is 101, executive 101. The Jets never did that, which is why they got stuck with guys like John Idzik to be the general manager of the team. Because John Idzik, this is probably going to be the greatest job he ever had. It's going to be the highest of highs for Idzik. But you have to take Rex because the Johnsons loved Rex Ryan and they didn't want to fire him. And that's fair. I don't have a problem with that. Then I would have just kept Tannenbaum for another year.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to make any changes then. You keep one, you keep them both. And then you go, now think about it like this. Imagine if we had Joe D during last offseason with Adam Gase. Okay? Joe D builds the roster exactly how he wants to build it. You don't have McCagnon. Listen, and I love the McCagnon free spending because, it makes free agency exciting when you can bring in Le'Veon Bell, bring in C.J. Mosley, and all that stuff. However, you saw what happened after that, though. Then it became a bit of a cluster because Gase and McCagnon don't get along. McCagnon does the draft, does a horrible draft pretty much right now. It's very early to tell, but, the jury's still out on how well they did because we won't know that for at least another year or two. If you have a guy like Joe D right on the spot there to do free agency and do the draft, he's going to build the team the right way. Now, what does that mean? Most likely, Le'Veon isn't here and CJ's not here.
Yeah.
Crowder could be here. I don't know. But again, this is what killed the Jets over those years. Is because they didn't know, if you're going to hire one, you got to hire. Even when they hired McCagnon, they hired Bowles first.
Yeah.
McCagnon didn't hire Bowles. Bowles was hired first, and then McCagnon came in. So it's just maybe they finally have it right, even though it was still backwards, because you had to you let McCagnon do the draft, you let McCagnon handle free agency. And then what was the first thing Joe Douglas realized? This line sucks.
Yep.
but everybody was signed, and there's nothing you can do, and the draft had already taken place. So
Yeah.
you pretty much you had to just ride or die in 2019.
But you know what? The one thing I liked about like you said, it was backwards that they picked the head coach before the GM. But at least Gase had a say in who he wanted the GM to be. Someone who they can get along with. And that's fine with me, honestly. I would have rather have the GM before the head coach. But if the head coach is getting a word in edgewise with the Johnsons, saying I think I've sat down with this guy. I think he's a good candidate. We should hire Joe Douglas, and I think that's fine. I think that's fine the way they went about it.
And that's what I'm saying. And you see the difference with a GM like Douglas. He knows what the main issue is. He's got to protect his franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
So the first thing he does is he bulks up that line immediately. Okay. Now listen, I think the line is improved. I don't know if it's a top 5 offensive line yet. I haven't seen him play. So we'll know more as the season progresses.
Right.
But I love what they've done so far. And there's a different atmosphere. There's a different vibe, man. And Jet fans are very pleased. The Jet fans seem really happy about having Douglas as the general manager right now. And that's what you want to see. They're not ripping everything to shreds. And that's why, like, as much as Jet fans are going to hate when I say this, I don't see reason why after this year, if he has a bad year, I don't see Gase getting canned.
Yeah, neither do I.
I think it's going to be another year because you have to have some continuity. I'm sick and tired of replacing coaches every 2 years.
Yeah.
I'm tired of it. I'm just done.
Look, we gave Todd Bowles 4 years. He didn't do it after 4 years. That was it. You're gone.
Yeah.
But I will say I don't think he'll be canned, but I do think he will be on the hot seat.
I think there'll be pressure on Gase. I'm not saying there isn't, and I'm sure he knows that. I mean, he's not so arrogant that he doesn't think that it's coming.
Yeah.
He reads the papers, he reads the blogs, he knows the fans hate him. So I'm sure he's going to, I'm sure he's aware of what's going on. But the way I look at it is this is now Sam's second year. And I think this is going to be more about how big of a step Sam takes this year that's going to save Gase's job.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be a record wins and losses. This schedule is freaking brutal, man. It is a brutal schedule for the Jets.
It came out that the Jets have the second hardest schedule.
Yeah. So you cannot sit there and listen. I don't like to use that schedule as an excuse. I really don't. And I wouldn't use it if Gase – here's the thing. The schedule will play a part in it, but if you don't see the development that Sam needs to take a step forward in year 3. I don't think it's got to be a colossal step forward, but everyone knows what he can do. So he doesn't have a lot of excuses. And I don't want to hear about weapons, and I agree with Jake 1,000%. They have weapons. The reason why people don't think they have weapons is because they don't have a DeAndre Hopkins lining up wide. They don't have Odell Beckham Jr. lining up wide or Mike Evans.
Right.
Right now the names aren't sexy. We know that. Rashad Perryman, Denzel Mims, Jamison Crowder. But I think having a healthy Chris Herndon for a full season and Ryan Griffin, who I thought was great for them last year, is going to play a huge role. And I think Le'Veon is going to have a bigger role than people think.
Yeah, I think, you can open up the playbook more now this year. Now that Le'Veon is, he has the playbook under his belt for a year. Sam Darnold will be playing, hopefully he'll be playing the whole season. You open up the playbook more and you can really stretch out what Le'Veon can do. And Le'Veon, he can play wide receiver and he can come out the backfield. That was the big reason why he wanted to get paid like a dual position player, because he's that good, and he deserved to get the money that we gave him. But Gase has to open up the playbook more and see what we all know Bell can do. All
right, Clem. Any parting gifts before we get out of here for Tuesday?
Yeah, let me talk about the Sopranos real quick. Okay, that ending was such horseshit.
I'll tell you what. You could take my parting gift if you need more time.
That ending was such horseshit. First of all, I thought Tony gets killed. Spoiler alert for everyone who's listening. I thought Tony got killed.
Clem, your spoiler alert means nothing because everybody saw this like 5 years ago. So it's like
I'm watching it and I'm like, oh, because in my mind I thought he was gonna die. So I'm watching it. They're in the restaurant, the last scene, and like they're setting up where he's
got Jordy playing in the background and everything.
Yeah, like they're setting it up. They're focusing on everyone in the restaurant. I'm like, oh, this is who's gonna kill him. And then they're sitting at the table and they're just cussed to black. I'm like, no.
Now you know why people hated the finale of the
That was so like I have an idea of what kind of happened. Like someone shot him and then done, he killed. But no, you're right though. Like you told me not to say like, oh, the story couldn't continue. The story really can't continue. Like because who?
Well, you can't because it's got to now that's why they're keeping it alive by doing a prequel.
Yeah, I mean you can't really continue the story after it. Because one, all the main characters. What are you gonna focus the story around? Paulie and AJ. Like you can't do that. It's terrible. That's terrible. You can't. It's.
I hated AJ. I thought he was such.
Oh my god, he sucked.
He was such a little turd, man.
He was awful. I'm texting my buddy the whole time. I'm like, yo, Janice needs to die. She needs to get whacked. She was the worst.
Well, the thing was, the problem with The Sopranos was the whole season was it would just be built up like, oh, who's going to get whacked? And you kind of knew who it was when you got to the end.
Yeah.
You like by the time you got to the season finale of each season, you kind of knew who was going to get whacked.
Yeah.
Just when it was going to happen. You know what? There's a place by me called Trainland, which is right on Sunrise Highway. It's a model train store and everything. The scene where Bobby Bacala gets whacked.
That's there?
It's there. And there's a huge poster in front. And the reason why I know this is because my in-laws live right around the corner from Trainland. And there's a huge poster in the window that has the Sopranos logo, and it says, the scene where Bobby Bacala gets whacked was filmed in Trainland.
That's crazy. Wow.
Well, my in-laws were there. My in-laws said they couldn't get on Sunrise Highway because you had trailers, you had all this stuff on that block. It was insane. The Sopranos, to me, was probably one of the more disappointing shows. Like, I'm not a big fan of overhyped shows. I think when people really build up shows too much, and then I sit down and I watch them, they're never as good as everybody makes them out to be.
Mm-hmm.
Sopranos is definitely one of them. I am not a huge fan of The Walking Dead. Yeah. Everybody swears up and down it's the greatest show ever. And I said, I work with 3 people who watch The Walking Dead religiously. And I kind of like mess with them a little bit because they get super pissed because I don't like the show. And I just said, I'm like, and they're like, yeah, it's getting so good. And I can't wait to see what the finale is. And I go, we all know what it is. Somebody trips over the virus. And then just like that, it's like Resident Evil, like the movie Resident Evil. And they get really offended. Like it's me. I take personal pleasure out of it. But that was another show that I didn't really particularly care for. The Office is a show that everybody swears up and down is amazing, and I just can't really get into it. But there were 2 shows, and you may not remember them because you're a pretty young guy. 2 shows that by far were the most overhyped, overrated shows, probably arguably of all time. One was Heroes. Heroes was a show on NBC. It was around the 2000s, so you might have been like in, I don't know, maybe June. When were you born?
95.
95. Yeah, it was probably gone by then. Heroes was basically about people that had supernatural powers. Each one had something different, and the big thing was like save the cheerleader, save the world. And Hayden Panettiere was, she was really hot back then too. She played the cheerleader and everything, and it was just like everybody had their different powers. The problem with the show was that they introduced so many characters, you couldn't keep up with who was who. And it got like ridiculous after a while. And like I just shut it down and I got so tired of it. Mm-hmm. And then the only other show that I really believe, that's actually one more. I'll give you one more. The X-Files I always thought was very overrated. The other show was Lost.
Yeah.
Lost was by far the most overrated show ever. Because I watched it and I'm like, this show freaking sucks. I was like, I didn't care after a while. It was like you just wanted them to die already because it was just ridiculous. Like the way they used to kind of build it up, people built up the show as like it was fantastic.
Yeah, and that I got the same thing from The Sopranos. I loved it. I loved every second of watching it, but I feel like people overhyped it where it was like on another level of show. Like it was like, well, to me, I think like Game of Thrones is like the #1 show of all time. And first of all, I don't recommend anyone to watch Game of Thrones anymore after that horrible last season. But that's a different story.
That's another show. Like I really tried to get into it, but the problem I have with HBO shows in general, and I don't know if you'll agree, and if you watch The Wire, you'll see this. an hour feels like days.
Yep.
When you watch an HBO show. And when you watch The Wire, because The Wire moves at a very slow pace.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a show that's riddled with action all the time. It's a lot of drama. Because while it takes place and it has to deal with like Baltimore and like, you know, the drug scene and everything like that, you don't get a lot of shootouts. You don't get a lot of, it drags and it drags and it drags. And it feels like an hour feels like literally a week that you've been watching it, because it feels like it takes forever. And I felt the same way about Game of Thrones. That's why I never really got into Game of Thrones either.
See, I never got into Game of Thrones originally. And then my one buddy who I know would have never watched it, he's like, yo, Chris, you got to watch it, man. It's mad good. So I watched it. I fell in love with it. Was a diehard Game of Thrones fan. And then when I watched the last season, I was like, I would when people told me, oh, what show should I watch? I need a new show to watch. I'm like, Game of Thrones. After season 8, I was like, don't watch Game of Thrones. No one watch Game of Thrones. You just have your heart ripped out by season 8. It's terrible. It's the worst feeling in the world.
I mean, if you really want to watch like really good gangster stuff, like Sopranos type stuff, watch The Godfather. It's one of the greatest movies of all time.
I gotta watch that. I'm a bad Italian.
Godfather 3 sucks. Godfather 3 sucks. It's not that good and it's really long. But Godfather 1 and 2, like, that is the perfect thing to watch when you're like stuck in your house on a snow day. And you're not going anywhere, and you know you're not going anywhere, and you just sit in your basement or sit in your living room and just watch The Godfather all day. And it's such an amazing movie. That and Goodfellas are like my 2 all-time favorite.
Love Goodfellas. I think my favorite like mobster movie is Bronx Tale, but I haven't seen Godfather. A bad Italian, and you know I get roasted all the time by my family members. They're like, "Oh, you ever seen The Godfather?" I'm like, "No," because every time I like walk in on it, it's the scene when Sonny gets shot.
It's the best scene ever.
It's always that scene. It's so weird.
You can't watch it on like AMC though. They cut out a lot, and
exactly.
You gotta get it on like DVD or something like that, or on demand. Like if they have it like the uncut version, it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I gotta watch it. But yeah, every time someone's watching it in my house, it's always the scene when Sonny gets shot at the toll booth. I'm like, every freaking time. It's right here every time.
Well, I'm glad you saw it my way about The Sopranos, because it really, like, at the end of the day, I was just like, yeah, it was nothing special. And then I had like the next morning, I'll never forget it too, because the next day at work, I argued with my friend he was in IT.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to be nice to the IT people in your job, because they'll fix your computer in like 5 minutes. If you're not nice to them, they won't fix it for 5 days. You got to be careful, right? So I tried to play it cool with him and everything. And when he said, and I quote, "There's so much more going on,"
right.
There's nothing going on.
There's not. All the good characters died. There's nothing going on.
Yeah. How many times have you and I heard that phrase? Oh, we're working on all this stuff, and and it turns out to be nothing. It's the same thing. It's fairly simple. Most likely, 99%, I'm willing to bet that it ended with Tony Soprano getting whacked.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only thing I can come up with, because you can't continue the story, because the only good characters that were left in Tony's crew were Paulie and Patsy. So what are you going to do? You're going to revolve the show around those two? Absolutely not. What are you going to do? Revolve the show around AJ going into the military? No. No one cares about Meadow. You can't continue the show. Like, yeah.
The best episode of The Sopranos by far, there were 2. One was the Columbus Day one, right, when all the friends are fighting and all that stuff.
Yeah, that was good.
Right? And then the other one was the Pine Barren episode, when Paulie Walnuts and Christopher get lost in the woods and they're eating the ketchup packets because they don't know where they're going.
Good. Well, the one thing about that episode, like, I was texting my friend. I was like, "Yo, when's this Russian guy gonna come back after being shot?" Like,
yeah,
because he got shot, and they were like, then he just disappeared. Like,
Bobby Bacala shows up with the hunter's uniform with like the bright orange, like.
So funny, so funny.
All right, well, listen, that's going to do it for us tonight on the Moffett on the Mic show. Thank you once again to Jake Asman for taking time to hang out with us and talk some football, talk some baseball. Jake's been a good friend of the show. We really appreciate it. You can check out his show every Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on SB Nation Radio, the Jake Asman Show. As of Monday, he's back, and, it's like I said, it's good to have him back on the radio and everything. So, again, Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on SB Nation Radio. Definitely check out the Jake Asman Show. He's awesome, and we really appreciate him being on the show. Clem, thank you for holding it down like you normally do. We're not going to have a show tomorrow night, but we'll be back on Thursday. And right now, we're tentatively scheduled to have Tim Healy, Mets beat writer from Newsday. He's going to be on the show. We got a lot to talk about with the Mets. I definitely want to pick his brain on a few things going on with some of the players, where they could be headed, especially with the possibility of a sale in the future with the Wilpons. So we're going to have a lot to talk about with Tim. So right now, he is tentatively scheduled for Thursday, but obviously on Thursday, we will let you know if he's on or not. But one more time, follow my show on Instagram at Moffett on the Mic, Twitter at Moffett on the Mic, and my Facebook page as well. You can follow the A1 Sports Radio Network on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Clem's going to be working on this. It'll be a podcast on Spotify by tomorrow morning, so definitely check it out. Share it, like it with your friends, whatever. And any support you guys can provide us is greatly appreciated. So on behalf of my tag team partner, Chris Clem, I am Craig Moffett. You've been listening to the Moffett on the Mic show, courtesy of the A1 Sports Radio Network. Have a great rest of the evening wherever you are. Stay safe. Remember, no show tomorrow night, but back on Thursday, possibly with Tim Healy from Newsday. Everyone, have a great day. Have a great night. We will talk again on Thursday.